Today we're demonstrating an electric battery-powered version of our overhead drum rotator. This unit is designed for use with a crane, so you see we have a lifting point in the centre, so we can attach it to any crane or overhead hoist. The purpose of this unit is to allow the clamping and securing of 200 to 220 litre drums, to allow us to lift them and to camp them remotely. So we have to secure the drum in by hand, so we use our band and the rim clamps on either side, but then we have a pendant controller, so a remote control which allows us to rotate and tip the contents out of the drum. When we're not using the machine and the machine's on the ground, we have wheels to allow it to be transported and stored easily. But when we're using it to lift drums, we lift the machine up with the crane and then we bring it into the drum without using the wheels, so it's lifted in with the hoist. We have a warning beacon to warn people in the area, but with this machine you'll find that two-person operation is easier, because once it's in the air it's useful to have a guy rope to keep it aligned and make sure it's always aligned with the vessel we're tipping into. So we'll lift up this drum. We've got a rotator lifted up in the air, clear of the floor, so we'll now bring it in using the crane close to the drum. Just guide it in nice and gently. So it's held in position. That looks good to me. So we'll now come round and close our band on the front. We've got this over centre band. Hook into position, move it over centre, line it up and hook it in. The band will stay closed because it's over centre, but we've got a locking pin, put that in to lock it in place. And we then have our rim clamps. So these connect onto the lip of a drum. Just need to adjust this one slightly. We'll adjust down one hole and put our pin in position. Tighten that up around the lid of a drum, and the same on the other side. Again, just going to come down one position on that pin, like so. The rim clamps are adjustable, so depending on the drum types you're using, you've always got that vertical adjustment if needed. So basically the band around the belly of the drum, that's gripping the centre, and the rim clamps are preventing any vertical slippage, so it's a very secure arrangement. Once we're happy, we're going to take our two remote controls. So I've got our crane controller and then also our controller for our rotation function. So we'll begin lifting. Got a guy rope here just to keep the unit in line with our vessel. We'll raise the unit to height before we bring it towards the vessel. Move across. Line ourselves up with the vessel. That looks pretty good from here. Then we've got our secondary controller, so this is for the rotation. Once the drum's empty, bring it back to a vertical. Just move the crane back as well. Bring the drum back upright. Obviously I've got the guide wire and the 2 controllers, but if we had extra people, we could have 2 people working on this operation. We're then ready to disconnect the drum and get the next one. To remove the drum, we do the opposite of the loading procedure. So we first release our rim clamps. We're loosening off the butterfly bolts on the top. We then come down to our clamp band. We remove our over-center locking pin. Take that out of the way. And then undo the band completely like so. This is a steel drum, so it's an empty steel drum. So we can slide it out and we're ready to go get the next one. We're now looking at the controls of this model. We have our power key here, which is off. We're going to twist it to on. When we turn the power on, our battery gauge will illuminate, showing the state of charge of the batteries. It's important to keep the unit charged when it's not in use. It's also powered up. We have our orange beacon that begins to flash while the power is on. And when we want to use the unit, we remove our remote controller, and this gives us our tip and return controls. When we first come to use the machine, we need to wake up the remote control. So to do this, we reset the e-stop, so it pops up and we get a green light. We then press both buttons once, and this wakes up the receiver on the unit. We now have the tip and return controls active. When we finish with the unit, we can press our e-stop to power down the controller. We can switch it off with our key. Once all the lights are out, we're now ready to charge the unit. To do this, we'd lift up the charging flap here, which exposes our battery compartment. We keep this open during charging, and we have the battery input here, so we plug in our external charger into this input to charge the machine. Once we finish charging, we disconnect our charger and close the charging cover.